Em Markowitz. I'm a research fisheries biologist at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center here in Seattle, Washington. This week marks my 1-year anniversary of being a Fed at NOAA Fisheries, which is always so exciting. And I've gotten to meet some really great people here on the West Coast, but I also got to meet people throughout NOAA through experiences I had when I was working at the Office of Science and Technology in 2 previous positions, one as a Knauss Fellow working in the Protected Species Science Branch, and then as a contractor working in the Socioeconomics group, where I helped write a bunch of reports and start to modernize how they do some of their data to product workflows as well. I bring it up because I'll talk about some of the work I did in those positions as well. But yeah, so throughout this, since grad school, throughout those positions and opportunities, I've been thinking a lot about data to product workflows, and I know I have a lot more to think about what that means and how I can continue to apply it even more efficiently and thoughtfully into my process. And so really, I'm going to present to you a couple of examples from my own work where I use this strategy and this thought process. And I'm really excited to learn with and from and chat more about what everyone else is doing. So yeah, I'll dive in. We so often, let's see, okay, there you go. We so often hear data to product and it sounds really complicated, right? We're scientists, we create a lot of data. You don't simply move. We think it's so hard to move from the data to final product, and it can seem really wrought with sometimes politics, but even just being a complicated thing to do. And I'm actually going to suggest that when you have the proper tools and you institute a strategy, it can actually be a really swift process. And I love this graphic by Alison Horst, but it gets used a lot, and I wonder if we often get a chance to really think about what this means. And it's a swift movement from working on the data to transforming and modeling and visualizing the data and communicating it in sort of one swift action. And so I've got a couple of examples where I think I do this process pretty well, and I've got scripts that take data and make a final product in very little amount of time. So I'm actually going to start with a fun example. So I recently built myself a personal website and CV entirely sourced from a Google spreadsheet. This is, got my Google spreadsheet. I put all the content in there that I would want it to have in a CV, in a website, in one, not the other, in neither. And I've got an R project, and I really just run one script. I have a script called run, and it downloads all this content from Google Drive, creates the pages, and produces my new website and my CV. And this can be really useful for, say, I love talking with students in Skype a Scientist and having an online presence for, say, grant proposals, or just getting people to learn about who you are. I'm an early career scientist. I'm new. So that might be something that's important to me, especially as I was aiming for a job like this incredible position I have now. So I do this all in about 5 minutes of time. Oh, I published a new paper. Edit the Google spreadsheet, run the script, and produce my new website, or my website with this new content. And you can see an example of that. I put a link at the bottom. But I also produced a template so you can see this in its most simplest form. Or if you want to do the same thing. But it's all on GitHub, and it's all really easy to use. The inspiration for this came from a blog that I read about data-driven CVs by Nick Strayer, who now works for RStudio, I believe. And so I put his blog at the bottom as well. And there's all these great resources out there for talking about how we can do these kinds of projects and so many others. And this can be applied to so much else as well, by using tools that we already have and doing it in really swift, beautiful motion. Done. The next thing I'm going to talk about is I had a task where I needed to produce graphics every day that we were on survey. So I work in the Eastern Bering Sea Survey team. So it's, basically otherwise known as the middle of nowhere. But we needed to send temperature data every day and then create a plot and then send that to the comms team. So it kind of had this structure a little bit in place, but I improved it a little bit. There's a Google spreadsheet again, right? Every day for each station that is done, there is a value put in for the dot and temperature, the date that it was done, or the date that they thought they were going to do. This is important too, not just because bottom temperature is an important topic, but because part of the agreement in doing the survey is that we tell Native communities in Alaska where we're going to be, when we think we're going to be there, and they can actually see our progress through the area. So we put this data into the Google spreadsheet, and then what I did is I wrote this I created these R scripts, and I ran them through a task scheduler every day at 9 a.m. That produced images that were then made available to the comms team and were posted on the website by noon every day. And what was beautiful about this is that I clearly was not able to do this from the middle of nowhere at Bering Sea. I ran this on a virtual machine, and it ran basically like clockwork. I had someone on land just checking in on it, but really it worked pretty successfully. And if the person on land had to spend, say 15 minutes a day opening the script, running it, emailing the comms team, sending them the graphic, and then they had to make a GIF. Part of it was that we also made a static image and a GIF. I saved everyone that amount of time times 3 months worth of survey work, including weekends. They no longer had to do that, right? It was all done for them through this process that took probably a few minutes of no one checking it and it just automatically running. So yeah, this is a pretty cool idea, and it's actually not a complicated script, but there are some cool nuanced things about it that make it a very easy data to product workflow. In the span of 18 hours from the end of the survey day to noon the next day, you had a final product on the AFSC website describing where we were and where we're going to be. The next tool I'm going to talk about is I had to develop a tool that anyone could use and to calculate the hearing threshold shifts in marine mammals. This is when I was a Knauss Fellow back in Office of Science and Technology. And what they had at the time was this Excel spreadsheet, which was, I used to say, extremely cumbersome, easy to get wrong. There were a lot of tabs, a lot of colors, a lot of places you could put content in, numbers for calculations that weren't the right place to put them in. You could misinterpret it. There are multiple calculations per page, per even area of the page. I used to say it was a kind of a mess. The person who built it, I mean, it was a huge endeavor on their part, but they were also super done with it, as you can imagine. But also, it's a really important tool. This is a tool that they said that they were going to put out and had to put out. So not having it wasn't an option. So they came to me and they're like, hey, I think that you could make an R Shiny app that would make this process a lot easier. And I was like, 100%. So I developed this R Shiny app, and the benefits here are that it's intuitive and it limits user error, right? Because you have only the cells that you need, the product, the output that you are asking for. It saves time because people at the Office of Effective Resources aren't checking the work in the Excel spreadsheet to see if you did it right. There's confidence in the values that are coming out. Also, it's way easier to look at and way more intuitive to follow all the steps. But also, at the end of the day, it produces a mutually helpful output. So you can see at the bottom, I've got this area where it says generate report or generate Excel file. That generate report produces a PDF that you can include with your permit application. Done, easy, check, right? This takes a few minutes. Understanding that Excel spreadsheet takes a little bit longer, like a lot longer. Like you'll probably get it wrong and then have to redo it longer. So here's you put the data in and you get your product out in as long as it takes you to fill out this page. I want to also highlight a similar effort that Meg Seipel, who is actually in this Openscapes cohort, did for a similar acoustic deterrence tool. And so while there is an effort to get these rolling and used by the public and by managers and everyone in between, I think that there is a lot more we could do with products like this. So that kind of brings me to this next slide. I think, there are so many great ways that we can use these ideas in a lot of different projects that are happening across NOAA. And so I ask you to consider would your current product development workflows benefit from similar data-driven approaches? I'm sure they would. And I'm really excited to talk with more of you about how that is, that can be applied. So I'm going to tell you about another example. About this our project that I am building called NMFSReports. So back when I was in the Office of Science and Technology in their socioeconomics group, I was responsible as the report editor for the Fisheries Economics of the US report. And you can see it here. It is huge and long and boring, but it's important because it underscores how important fisheries are to the United States economy. So previously they would hand write in the numbers that had to change, and I was 100% not going to do that. So I redeveloped it all into RMarkdown and picked up a couple of tips and tricks. I actually gave a talk about it at the DC Saturdays 2020 conference, which you can watch if you're interested in learning more about it. And the report that I worked on, this is the 2016 report. I worked on the 2017 and beyond reports. 2017 just got published, so you can see how similar they are now. And it's really exciting to see it finally in the flesh. So I learned all these tips and tricks, and I was like, all right, well, for making my own process more efficient and easier, I should write a package of my favorite functions from this process. But I soon learned, and this is, fun, Em's faves funks, but I soon learned that actually a lot of the work I did was useful to more people than just me, and a lot of the functions in there had a similar theme. So I developed the NMFSReports package, and I even gave a talk about it at our Cascadia 2021, which is super fun. And I think that package is a really good start, if not more than that, but definitely a really good start to trying to make this process of writing reports, which can be somewhat arduous, annual reports, right? They have to come out every year. They basically have the same content in them, more streamlined and more approachable. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for more ways to make that process better. And that's kind of my first stab at it and putting it out there, build it and they will come maybe. And so like I said, it used to take all of these steps to get a report published. First, you collect the data, then realize that you didn't have the right data. Then you talk to the subject matter experts. They told you what data to use. You're getting it from them. There's a middleman now, right? Someone's got to make the graphics. Someone's got to make the report 508 compliant. It's a huge pain in the butt. This is manual line by line report editing and very painful, fraught with error. And so what I did effectively with the NMFSReports package and is that I developed this swift workflow of data to analysis to product. And the boxes on the bottom are well above my pay grade, so I definitely wasn't going to do them. But imagine that if I could run this script in a matter of a few minutes, it could be in the hands of leadership in an email sent directly after that, which is pretty novel. When I think about writing a report, there are 6 kind of main topics that I want to economize upon and make more efficient. First, we want to make sure that the data is the data that we're using is coming directly from the source. We need to understand what's happening to that data, but also that we can collaborate and integrate content from Google Drive from our colleagues pretty easily, whether it's a spreadsheet that needs to go into a report that I couldn't possibly come up with the content of, or they need to write an introductory paragraph that's just not my job to do. That can all be sourced directly. Streamlining report creation is about using templates and functions that help guide you through this process and make it less chaotic, right? We can help each other out by coming up with how we should approach this problem. Consistent and I'll say dynamic grammar structure is having reports that can understand the difference between an 8% increase, because H starts with E, or a 2% decrease, right? That already saves so much time in just that simple math if-else statement. 508 compliance is possible, and it's not just about colors, right? The way that RMarkdown works, it is already kind of building in this text reader friendly output, which saves your comms team and you probably tons of time in going through all the rigor and remorse of having to do the 508 compliance guideline, following those guidelines, which are really important, but are not easy. Version control, saving to GitHub, Google Drive. That's just so important for sharing and saving your work, and also for the onboarding, offboarding process, and delegating, right? As you are going to build this project out and have a team of people who work on it, they should be able to follow what you're doing, and that this is part of that. Also, you know, one report to the year to the next might have X number of differences, and so documenting that too. And then output flexibility, right? We're not just creating a model or creating a report, but we're creating fact sheets and summary tables and graphics that are going to be used from this process to develop those things. And so we can actually do it in one fell swoop and bring this project together. So that takes me to the end of my talk. I'm really excited to chat with you all more and hear what your takeaways are. But the takeaways I hope that you get from this talk are that you can create thoughtful data products workflows for almost anything, whether it's fun websites or calculator tools online, anything in between. It's possible. And we don't just run models and get data and obtain outputs. We can also strategically use those outputs to make final products too. Thoughts for next week, not next week, but next Openscapes session, you'll have a guest speaker, Shante Davis. And something I want to get you're thinking about is that a lot of these are projects that me, myself, and I did. These are one-person development projects. And I think that this is really the start of bringing in a community and collaboratively working on these projects and also enhancing each other's workflows. So she's going to talk a lot more about that, and I implore you to just keep that in the back of your mind as you go through your next working sessions and as Shante Davis is talking. So thank you all. It's been great chatting with you, and yeah.